All right. Welcome to Dugout Dish Baseball Recruiting Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Keith Glasser. Episode 3. You ready, Coach?
Ready. Let's do this.
All right. So today, we're going to touch on 3 or 4 different topics. Got a couple questions that we get asked routinely. Shed a little light on a couple popular topics that we think are deserving of a little bit of a longer conversation. So first one, we're going to talk about the level of play in college baseball, kind of dispel the myth that it's this linear relationship between division and level of competition. Coach, obviously we've been at this for a while. We got a pretty good feel for the level of competition up and down college baseball, and I think anybody who's been in the game long enough or has an understanding of the level of competition across college baseball knows that just because you're Division One doesn't mean you're better in Division Two and Division Three and so on and so forth, and that there's layers within layers within layers when you're talking about the talent level, the level of competition, the quality of program. So I'll stop my ramble and I'll let you get us kickstarted here on a nuanced topic.
Yeah. I think when you start kind of peeling back the layers of this onion, I think a lot of people kind of view college athletics and in baseball, they kind of view it through the lens of like JUCO's the lowest level, Division III is the second lowest, Division II, and then Division I. When that's not necessarily the case when it comes to college baseball, there's some JUCOs out there that will go toe to toe with some of the best teams in the country. I mean, there's dudes at those levels, and same thing in Division III and same thing in Division II. I was blessed enough to have coached Division I, II, and III. I never coached JUCO, but I can tell you there's guys at every level, and there's really good teams at every level. And I was an upstate New York guy who played at Marist and then went down and coached at West Alabama. Excuse me. And, I was like, how good are we going to be? Division II. Like, we were 6th in the country. We're going toe to toe with Lynn and Florida Southern and Tampa and Southern Arkansas. I mean, Southern Arkansas that year had a first rounder who was like 95 to 97. Like, it was absurd. But there's guys at every level. And I think, the very basic issue that a lot of people run into is they think along the lines of like JUCO's not that good, Division III is like 13th grade, and Division II, well, whatever, we'll see. And then Division I is where I want to go. When you can find the right fit academically and program-wise and development-wise within any of those divisions, including JUCO, and succeed and put yourself in a better spot to go play, specifically if you're playing JUCO, to go play at a 4-year school, but those 4-year schools, you can develop into a guy who, if pro ball is in your future, you can do it from the Division III level. You could do it from the Division I level. You could do it from Division II. It depends on the development you're going to get at that program. And conversely, there's programs that you go to where it might not be in your future. And that's just the reality of what it is for some of these programs. So, I think to kind of dispel the myth, and, you and I have talked about this a lot, of it's not just this linear, like JUCO is 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st. There's a lot of different things that kind of weave their way in and out of this. And there's really good baseball being played at all levels. You have to be humble enough to understand that while also seeing where you fit personally into one of those divisions and programs within those divisions.
The thing for me that people get caught up in is I think most people just assume that it's the way that they want it to be and that it's that straightforward because it's the easy thing to think, right? It's the stance you can have on the topic without having a ton of information into it. And it's not that straightforward. There's multiple tiers within Division I baseball. I mean, think about this. There's schools in the NEC that are competing for the same trophy of schools in the SEC, right? Nothing against the NEC, right? But it's not the same level of baseball. And that's like the first step to understanding that not all things are created equal within a division. And then you got to understand that there's overlap within those divisions. I mean, you got Division II programs, the Millersvilles, the Westchesters, the Tampas, North Greenville down in North Carolina. And they're as good as a lot of Division I programs. I'm not going to call anybody out, but if you're around college baseball, that programs like that, and there's plenty other ones that we didn't mention, they're as good, if not better, than a lot of Division One programs. And it's not just talent, right? It's not just a pure talent. It's they have better coaches. They run a better program. The expectations within a program are different. And it's same thing goes with Division Three. Like the high end of the Division Three table is it's super competitive, and there is some overlap with some Division One schools. By the time a lot of those Division Three programs, those guys become juniors and seniors, they are now not the kid that was recruited out of high school. They're now a 20, 21, 22-year-old. And, you watch the Division Three College World Series, and, there's guys that are running out there that are 89, 92, and they can pitch. And there's position players who are physical, and they can run, and they can play the game. And I think people take the easy way out when it comes to this conversation a lot of times. And I just think the myth needs to be dispelled a little bit because, to your point, people view Division Three as it's like it's 13th grade. Like, no, only what's the number everybody throws out? 7%, right? 2.2% play Division One, 2.2%, Division Two, Division Three. The filter is fine regardless of what level, but you got to understand that players develop at different rates, and it's just the level of competition isn't that straightforward. And the other thing that I always find interesting when people start talking about is I love the term Power Five, right? And it's for me, it's a football term. It's something that is kind of baked into the world of football because you got the Big Ten and the Pac-12 and the Big 12, the ACC and the SEC. And is there some truth to that statement as it goes as far as college baseball? Yes, there is some truth, right? But there's a lot of programs that aren't in those conferences that are better than the programs in those conferences. And that's another thing. And I've had parents scoff at programs. I've had players just have generally no understanding that there's programs outside of those five conferences that are total ass kickers, right? You look in the top 25 right now, you got what we were talking about this today. You got UConn, you got Florida Gulf Coast, you got Campbell, you got ECU. I think UC Santa Barbara's in some. ODU's been in and out of the top 25, Southern Miss, Texas State. And most people hear some of those school names and they don't get fired up, but they also have zero knowledge of how good they are. And I think that that's where it starts, is that most people, they take the easy way out when it comes to this conversation. And for me, that's a little frustrating because, we know how good some of these programs are. And it just deserves a little bit of a longer conversation.
Well, I think it goes back to kind of, I think podcast one, you and I touched on this just a little bit of legitimately watching college baseball. Like try to catch some games, watch them on ESPN Plus, watch them on whatever it is that you can, catch games on, because you can start to kind of really see a lot of really good baseball being played at all levels. That is the first, I think the first thing that people really need to be able to realize is that, you are an outlier if you're going to go play college baseball, right? Like 93% of the high school seniors that are playing baseball right now are not going to play college baseball. So you're an outlier getting to college. So, it doesn't matter what level you go to, you still have to be pretty good by and large to go play college baseball. Then it tiers from there, right? Like, the top guys are obviously going to the SEC, the ACC, schools like that. But you still have to be, like I said, a really good baseball player. And I think you have a mix of things that kind of feed into the, I don't want to say misinformation because that's the wrong word to use, but maybe the myth, the misunderstanding, the lack of legitimate education for parents and kids that are going through the process. Because, I used to say this all the time when I was coaching. It is the recruiting process is a veiled process on the coach's side, right? Like you're trying to, as a coach, I'm trying to fill my roster with guys that I want on my program, that are in my program, that are going to help me win. But I also know that I'm recruiting 5, 6, 7 guys for one spot. So, I'm not necessarily being like, I'm not showing all my cards all the time. I have a ranking system of who I want. And I think there comes a time where, you got to pull the veil back a little bit and kind of say like, hey, look, like there's a lot. Just because you're on my recruiting board doesn't mean you're on someone else's, and just because you're not on mine doesn't mean you can't play somewhere else. It's more along the lines of what fits my program, my style of coaching, and what it is that I want, what's going to make us good. And I think there's people who have the best intentions in families and players' lives, but aren't necessarily up to date with the most information available for them to be telling them the information they are. I think is the best way to put it. I think they have the best intentions, that they, and they have the kids' best interest in mind, but they don't have the correct information, and that's where people go down the wrong path. I've had a lot of people who have reached out to me as coaches and guys who give lessons and things of that nature when I was coaching, that flat out told me like, I know this kid can play for you. I always had a problem with that as a coach, because it's like I'd always ask, like, have you seen us play? And the answer was always like, well, not in like 8 years, or no, I haven't. Well, if you've never seen us play, like, how can you tell me definitively that this person can play for me? Or how can you say he can't? Like one or the other, right? Like, if you have no knowledge of what it is that is going on in my program, how can you tell somebody like, no, you can't play there, or yes, you can? Like, I'm the one who's going to make that decision eventually, or my assistant coach, whoever is recruiting him and sees them the most, like, that's the person who's going to kind of make that decision. So it's I've always had a problem with that, kind of to your point on the information that people get, that it's, I don't necessarily, I don't believe that it's with bad intentions. It's with the best interest in mind for the kid, but I don't think they are as well informed as they should be. And that's how we end up having this conversation, where people think that, it's you can kind of scoff at Division 3 schools or Division 2s, or what people would consider a mid-major Division 1. That's not necessarily always going to be the case. Like, it's really good baseball, and you have to keep all doors open and kind of understand where you fit into that, so that you can find the best fit for you. You might close some doors just because you scoff at a program and don't think it's good, and then 3-4 years later, be like, probably should have taken that one a little bit more seriously. But
Yeah.
that's it's the way of the world, right? But I think that's kind of one of the biggest things that I have always found with when I was coaching, that kind of always bothered me. And I just kind of thought that it was worth being said. It's not. I don't think there's any bad intentions or malintent behind it. It's just it's a lack of understanding and a lack of information on people's behalf, which then leads you down a really bad path.
Yeah, and it leads to that D1 and bust mentality, right? And there's some validity to it, right? If you're a high school kid and you're 25, or and you want to play Division 1 baseball, like, yeah, absolutely, go for it, get after it, like, do what you need to do to be the best player that you can be. But oftentimes, I actually think that the D1 and bust mentality comes from parents more than the kids. But most of the time, I feel that kids, they generally want to go somewhere where they have a chance to play and they're going to get a chance to compete, and with the good intentions there. Now, obviously, you run into some guys that are a little bit more hard headed, and that's fine, right? I'm okay with stubborn. I'm okay with a kid who wants to, shoot, have the, shoot for the highest stars. Like, I get that, and I'm all aboard with that. But I've watched and seen kids lose opportunities because they didn't want to take honest feedback, and they weren't willing to look in different places because somebody was either in their ear telling them, hey, you're better than that program, to your point with that person probably not having any real knowledge of where they fit. And then really it comes down to looking at the whole picture and what are you trying to get out of this, right? If you're an ACC or an SEC guy, you'll know it, right? That you'll know it because you're going to be getting recruited by plenty of schools, and like, those guys stick out. It's it's the other guys that you need to be honest about where you fit and what's important to you. so that you don't get engulfed in that whole D1 and bust mentality. And if you're a Division 1 player, great, awesome, go get it. But this idea that going somewhere that's at the Division 2 or Division 3 level is like a consolation prize is such a weird thing to me. Probably because we know how good some of those programs are, and also, if you want to find out how good you can be, you got to play. So, what's wrong with going to an awesome Division 2 program, winning, and getting a chance to compete versus, well, I went to a being able to say when you're 35 that I played Division 1 baseball, like nobody cares. Like it's the truth. Like nobody cares. I don't identify as a college baseball player anymore, right? Like nobody cares what level I played at or how many games. And it's hard for a 17-year-old to understand that. But what you'll remember about in college is how much did you play, the dudes that you played with, the wins, the losses, the bus rides, and don't let a bad amount of information get in the way of you making a good decision. Right. That's a big thing for me and it's a hard conversation sometimes to have to tell a kid, hey, I think we need to look in other places because I think you're going to find a better fit somewhere else. So if you're listening, don't get caught up in that rigmarole. Be open to programs, not levels. And that's usually a pretty good place to start.
And I think being able to have those conversations throughout the recruiting process is vital to being able to find not only the right, program to go play for, but the right fit. You're going to end up legit, the likelihood of you ending up in the transfer portal if you're going somewhere just because you're chasing levels is incredibly high. You want your college experience to be something that, like you said, there's a lot of times that, and nowadays, I'm 30, so I don't even know how old I am, 36, 37. I don't really remember a lot of the wins and the losses. I remember some, but I remember more of, the bus rides, the trips that we took, the practices, freshman year. I texted you and Soups the other day, like we saw something on Fallible Sports where they're shoveling off the tarp. Like I remember freshman year pouring water on the ice in the outfield. Like what an absurd concept. Like, but I remember stuff like that. Like, Robbie Ryan singing in the outfield. Like those are things that you start to remember, and the relationships that you build, and you look at what you and I are doing, and things like that you continue to you do this with people that you build unbelievable relationships with during the course of your college career, and I think that is something that is not necessarily talked about, but is something that is more or less kind of glanced over when you start talking about program and fit. You want to be able to go to a place where not only you're going to develop, you're going to excel academically, but you're going to also excel personally. You're going to meet friends and people that you are going to be friends with for the rest of your life. It's not going to be everybody, right? Like, we played with a lot of guys. Like, I don't talk to every single one of them, but there's a decent amount of guys that I talk to on a regular basis that we played with. And that's something that is special to me. And I'm glad that I had that as part of my experience at Marist. So, I think that is, we were, I think, sometimes people will listen and be like, well, you're a Division 1 guy. Like, that's easy to say that. Like, I don't know if I'd be a Division 1 guy nowadays. And that's the reality, but having coached Division 3, having coached Division 2, having coached Division 1, played Division 1, like I can legitimately tell you, like, you're far better off finding the right fit from a program and development and personal standpoint, and specifically academics, than you ever will be just chasing levels to go to a school because of what the name on the front of the jersey. And it sounds super cliche, but it's true. You're going to have a far better experience and have a far better career in whatever it is that you choose to do, especially from a networking standpoint. If you go to a school where, you're connected to 30, 60, 70 dudes, and then that alumni network and the things that go on from there, like those things that you can commit to for 4 years no matter what the level is, and you kind of start that path right away, like you end up in a far better spot in my opinion, not chasing the level and chasing the fit and the development and the program and the academics than you ever will be just saying like, I want to go play Division 1 baseball. Like, yeah, everyone does. But you know what? sometimes one, it's not in the cards for everybody. That's just the reality. And two, it might be in the cards, but it might be better for you to go to a different school, a lower division school that is still really good athletically, but also really good academically. It's going to set you up moving forward.
Yeah, I mean that the long term piece is really important because when you do make that decision, right? If you're going to go play professional baseball, awesome, like good on you. But most guys aren't, and even the ones who do, most of them aren't going to make a ton of money doing it. So, that piece of paper and your experience should matter. It should absolutely matter, and oftentimes the experience is coupled with playing time and winning and all that good stuff. So, if you're a parent or a player listening, just be open minded that there could be a fit out there besides a Division One school, right? And you may not be a Division One guy right now, and that's fine. Understand that the recruiting process is iterative, and you reserve the right to continue to get better. And I mean, you see it all the time. You see guys, the fall of their sophomore year going into their junior year, they're not where they, the fall of their junior year going into their junior spring. They may not be that surefire Division One guy, but 6 months later, they're getting closer, and then they get 2 months into the summer, and they put themselves in that position. So it's not that you shouldn't have that as a goal, right? I understand it. You want to play at the quote unquote highest level of college baseball. Shoot for it, but also don't be so close minded and stubborn that you don't consider other options just because the number next to the division isn't what you think is the cool thing, right? Like, don't go chasing a bumper sticker. Chase an experience, chase a coaching staff, chase an education, chase a chance to play, chase a chance to compete. Those are the important pieces of the puzzle. You touched on the dreaded transfer portal a couple minutes ago. I think that that's enough. Almost every parent or player that I talk to, they want to know, how is the transfer portal going to impact me? Is it going to impact me? How's it impacting high school players? And there's a lot going on in college baseball with the transfer portal now, and there's a few other pieces that just happened with the expansion of the rosters that I think is going to have a fairly significant impact on it. But Keith, I know you were running through some numbers today. Maybe if you want to shed a little bit of light on some of your research around transfers and the current activity in the last calendar year at the Division One level.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of young baseball players that are in the transfer portal. We've talked about this in previous podcasts, and it's probably going to be an issue, and not an issue. It'll probably be something that's brought up in a lot of our future podcasts, especially when we start bringing some coaches on in the coming weeks. But the reality is it's not going away. I think we've talked about this before, but the number of transfers, and when we start talking transfers, we're talking 4 to 4, we're talking 2 to 4. The JUCO to a 4-year school, and 4 to 4s. So there's a substantial amount of kids who are transferring school to school. I went through the Power Fives, and these are not official numbers, but I went through some rosters, and I think in the ACC there was 88 transfers on rosters. This is the entire conference. The SEC had 157, Big 12 had 124, the Pac-12 had 114, and the Big 10 had 116. And I think some things obviously play into that, right? Like the ACC and the Big 10, and the Pac-12 for the most part, they have 11 teams in there. There's some higher end academic Division One schools in those conferences. So it's not necessarily something where I think you're going to get a ton of guys transferring in and year out. Now, some of the other schools where they might not, it is, it's not Duke, it's not Vandy, it's not Stanford. There's a little bit more wiggle room for transfers in there, and there's JUCO guys and there's 4-year guys. And I think that that's something that, when we talk about the recruiting process and the levels, you can roll through a lot of the, Power Fives and look, like there's a lot of JUCO guys on those rosters. And I think that is something that kind of gets lost on, on people from the from a high school recruiting standpoint. Like you're competing against everyone else in your graduating class to go play college baseball and be recruited, but you're also competing against other college guys, the JUCO guys, and other 4 year guys who might be looking to transfer somewhere else. So there's a lot more that kind of goes into it there, and it's not necessarily to scare anybody, right? Like I'm not looking to scare you into this is a big scary process and what's going on, but this is the reality. Almost, I would venture a guess, and this is a complete off the top of my head guess, but I would venture a guess to say that 70 to 75% of all divisions, like will at least explore the JUCO option. And that's a high percentage of schools that are looking at junior colleges. I mean, when I was coaching, I know we did it when I was at West Alabama. We did it when I was at Siena, and we did it at RPI. I had JUCO guys when I was there too. So to kind of think that just because you're at a higher end academic institution, you're not recruiting JUCOs, like that's not the case at all. So I think it's something that's not going away, and I think some of the stigma of the transfer portal is that you go in there and you made the poor decision, you committed super early, and that might be the case in some instances for people. Others, it might be the coach left, the guy who recruited you left, and you don't necessarily the entire staff is gone, and you're leaving. There might be some other things that are going on personally where you want to get out of that school, and that's fine. But I also think if you're a JUCO guy, you're not technically, like, yeah, you're in the portal, but like you're not technically in the portal for anything other than you got your associates and you're looking to go play at a 4 year school. You're looking to further your career there too. So there's I think there's again a couple levels to that, but a little bit of a myth dispelling for me that I don't think it's always super negative to be in the transfer portal. Do I think that if you're in there like 7 times, it's a red flag for me? But hey, if the coach left or you got something going on personally, something's going on family wise, you maybe just didn't find the right fit the first time. You thought you did, and you missed. Like, hey, it's life; it happens. But those necessarily aren't negative to me. But the reality is, if you're a high school kid listening, like you're competing against JUCO kids, you're competing against other 4 year guys that are going to go try to take a spot at a school that you might be being recruited at. So you have to make sure that you show up every day and put your best foot forward so that you can be good and be recruited too. So there's a lot that goes into it, and not all of it is super negative, but it's kind of the reality of where I think all of college sports are, but especially college baseball right now.
Yeah, the 1 year transfer exemption changed everything, right? Because you get, if you're a kid, you get, you kind of get a free pass at maybe not making a mistake, but you get a free pass to get out of a situation that may not be most beneficial to you. And there's, like you said, there's a lot of reasons that could be the case, right? It could be that you're not getting playing time. They brought in junior college kids and you don't see a path to playing time, and you want to go somewhere and you want to get a chance to play. It could be it's not an academic fit. Something could happen personally. There's a lot of reasons that kids go in the portal. But I think from a high school perspective, from a high school player's perspective, you got to understand that it's out there, and you got to understand that it does affect you, right? College coaches are going to defer to an already proven player at the collegiate level, right? That's just, they're in the business of winning, and if they can go get a player that they know has a chance to contribute right away, they're going to do it. And you're seeing it all over college baseball, and it's not going to go away with the 40-man rosters coming. Basically, you just add 5 guys to every roster that aren't going to play, right? If you're a college coach, you've got 13 or 14 position guys that you go to on a regular basis, right? You got your 8 regular starters. You probably got 1 or 2 rotational outfielders, maybe a left-handed hitter, right-handed hitter combo. You probably got a couple guys in the infield that are rotational players, and you got a backup catcher. And then you got 8 or 10 arms that you actually want to throw. Everybody else is, this is just this straightforward answer. Everybody else is expendable. And you're just going to add 5 guys to the back end of those rosters, and guys are going to make decisions, and I don't blame them. It's not throwing shade or having fault on anybody, but if you're the 38th guy on a roster in the SEC, What's wrong with leaving that school and go and play somewhere where you're going to get a chance to play? If you were wearing an SEC uniform, somebody's going to welcome you with open arms because you were probably pretty talented. You may not be talented enough to play on that team right now, right? And just you got to understand that it's a piece of the puzzle, and you got to understand that coaches are actively trying to bolster their roster with kids who are already proven. It doesn't mean that you can't get recruited, right? It's not a zero sum game. They're still looking for high school players. They're still looking for guys that can make an impact earlier in their career. But I think it kind of circles back to the fit conversation and like kind of the D1 and bust thing, is that be open to other things, be open to different tiers within Division 1, be open to Division 2, Division 3, because your overall experience might end up being better. I was talking with a friend of ours earlier today, and the other thing that we were talking about was if you're on a roster and you can't get on the field by the end of your sophomore year, there's a really good chance that you're probably never going to play much, because you get recruited over, transfer portal to plug holes, and understanding the opportunity to develop and understanding the ability to get on the field early needs to factor into your decision when you're going through the recruiting process, right? It's a meritocracy once you get there, but the transfer portal needs to be a piece of the puzzle when you're considering some of these schools. Like, it's not hard to find out who is bringing in 10 or 12 transfers every year. We'll do the math. If they've got 12 high school kids committed and they're bringing in 10 transfers every year, somebody's got to go, right? There's a story out of the Big 12 earlier this fall. Public knowledge. I won't call anybody out. You can look it up. 4 freshmen got to campus, 4 highly recruited freshmen, and they were told they no longer have a spot on the team when they got to campus. And it was because those coaches went and got other players. They probably got their scholarship money screwed up because somebody stayed or somebody didn't go, or they offered too much money to somebody, whatever it is. They didn't balance their books, and they had to hack high school kids. And that hopefully it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. And just understand that it does impact you, and you need to have some knowledge of it so that you can minimize the impact that it's going to have on you. Just a little bit of research, a little bit of a deeper dive into the programs that are recruiting you, understanding the communication, the level of interest. It'll help you avoid any negative impacts that can have on you. But transfer portal is real, and it's good in some ways, for sure. I mean, it heightens the level of competition, and I think it's going to raise the stakes in college baseball. But yeah, it can be tough for some high school kids here moving forward, and that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, and it's going to. We've talked about this before. The whole job of a college. I mean, there's a lot of jobs, but one of them is to win. And if you're going to help us win, and I think this is also something when, you're looking at rosters, like, see where they're recruiting from, see what, is it JUCO? Are they transfers? Are they high school kids? But take a legitimate look at how many position guys they have, how many infielders are there, how many corner guys do they have, how many outfielders are there? If there's 6 outfielders on the roster and one's a senior, likelihood of them recruiting a lot of outfielders next year is not that high, unless their outfield is not very good. And then, we're probably getting into the transfer portal and things like that. But, there's no secret, or there's no key. There's no exact science to the recruiting end of things. You're going to recruit guys that, you might recruit over some guys that you thought were going to be really good, because all of a sudden you find some other high school kids that are better, and I think this is one thing that kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit too, is, when you're running a program from the coaching end of things, when you're recruiting, like, the whole point of recruiting is to continually make your program better. You're not just recruiting to maintain the status quo. Like, you're recruiting to continually level up your program year after year after year after year, which means that as a player in that program, like, they believe you're in that program to help them win. You need to level your game up year after year after year after year. And if you don't, you're just going to get passed. and that's just that's just the reality of life. It's the reality of college athletics. It's the reality of a team dynamic. And it's, like you always say, it's a meritocracy when you get there. Like, it's, you're going to play if you're good. And if you have the ability to help us win, you're going to find yourself in the lineup. If you're not, you're going to get passed over, and then there's going to be decisions that are going to be made. So there's a lot. Those are the things that I think that we've kind of outlined tonight. Like, those are things that I think not a lot of people talk about, and it's a hard conversation to have with people. This is the truth about what is going on within college baseball, the transfer portal, and what coaches think, and things like that. Like, it's, you have to be good to continue to play. You have to be good to get in the lineup and play weekly and be in every game. So if you're not, then those are tough conversations. But it might end up being where you might end up in the transfer portal because you're getting recruited over because you just haven't developed enough. So it's not the biggest negative in the world, but it's just a reality that's going to happen for a decent amount of people nowadays.
Yeah, and I think that the other question we get asked about a lot, and I think that the transfer portal does play into this, is we get asked about timelines, right? And you get 2025s or 2024s or 2026s panicking, right? Rule number one: don't panic, right? That's I don't know if Jocko said that or whoever, but I think Coach Murphy, one of my favorites of all time now, Merrimack. That was kind of rule number one, is don't panic, and I think that overlaps into the recruiting process. So you get kids, like, if you're a 2025 and you're not getting recruited right now, it doesn't mean that you're not good, right? Everybody's process is different. Everybody's timeline is going to be different. Guys are going to peak at different times, and the one piece of advice I can have with regards to timelines is not about when, it's about getting it right. And if you're a 2026 and you commit this summer, great. I hope you got it right, because you got a long ways to go before you get to campus. And your recruiting process, while you may have posted your Twitter, your Instagram graphic, or what do they call them, edits? I think they call them edits now. You may have posted that, but all it is a social media post. It's a verbal agreement, and you need to hold up your end of the bargain, and you need to continue to develop, because if you don't, and you start getting passed later on by guys in your class, those coaches will let you go, right? And it happens every summer. We hear it all the time. Guys just didn't develop, so we went and got another guy. And it's not the coach's fault. People can blame the coaches, and I see people tweet about it. Hey, the coaches need to make a decision that's best for their program. But the players, you also got to know that you need to put in the time and the effort to get there. But I think some of what drives those really early commitments is this pressure from their peers. They're like, I want to commit. I want to be able to post. I want to be able to tell everybody that I committed. And I think it makes for some bad decisions. And I think you get some guys who commit early and they either made the wrong commitment and it ends up not working out for them, or they find themselves in a situation when they get to campus that they weren't really prepared for, because they didn't take the time, they didn't do the due diligence on getting to know the coaching staff, on really getting to understand the program. And for me, if you're 26 and you're a bro and Arkansas offers you 50%, like, go pitch for the Razorbacks. Like, go get it done. Make sure you bust your ass for the next 4 years and get ready to go. But if you're not getting a really good offer and you don't feel really comfortable about what is coming down the pipe, there's no pressure to commit. Don't let anybody pressure you to make a decision that's going to have lasting impact on you as a person and as a player. Focus on what you can control, focus on develop, focus on getting better, and don't worry about all the other stuff that gets posted on social media. And focus on your timeline and making sure that you get the process right. And I don't envy these young men who have to go through this, because we never had to deal with it as players. Like, I didn't even know who guys from the state of New York were when I was in Massachusetts. Now these guys are worried about the catcher from Chicago that they saw on some video, and he's going to take a spot at the school that they like. it's such a weird dynamic, and I don't envy the kids because I think if they wasn't there, a lot of these kids would be more focused on like, let me just be the best that I can be, instead of worrying about, well, I saw that so and so committed, I really wanted to go there, but now that they committed an infielder, I can't go there. Well, no, that's not true. But also, let's look in the mirror and worry about that guy a little bit.
Yeah, the whole social media thing has changed, the game for I think in some ways a lot of positives, and I think in other ways not a lot of positives. I think it has accelerated timelines on a lot of these kids for that very reason, that people are looking for a little bit more clout, and they want to be done because I think they feel the pressure of seeing all these other people have committed. So I should commit, and I do think there are programs out there that more or less, in my term, I'm just going to use what I would say. I think they more or less kind of bully people into making decisions that maybe are not the best for that potential student athlete in the moment. There's a lot of things that are going to happen over the course of the next. If you're 26, what are you, a freshman right now? Is that a freshman?
Yeah, freshman.
Yeah. So if you're a freshman and you're a 26, like, you're not playing college baseball for 5 years. Like, there's a lot that is going to go on over the course of the next 3, 4, 5 years before you really set foot on campus and play a legitimate game for that program. And I think that there's, people don't necessarily want to take that into account. Like, and it's not just what's going on in your world. Yeah, everyone's going to tell you like, yeah, I plan on being here, but let's be honest, like, college athletics is a business. If someone's going to be able to better their life and their family's life, like, they're probably going to take that decision, and worry about themselves and their families, and then do what's best for them. And that goes for head coaches, that goes for assistant coaches, it goes for assistant coaches way more than it does for head coaches, right? But there's going to be head coaches that are going to walk away. There's going to be head coaches that are going to go to other programs because it's a better fit for them, and it's a level up, and it's more money, and it's more XYZ. You're in a better conference, whatever it is, but there's 5 years of that. There's a lot of things that can happen, that can change over the course of that time. And I think trying to accelerate it just to for kind of for what, right? Like, because they're putting pressure on me, and I need to do this. Like, I can promise you, if you're a bro 26 and you continue to be a bro for the next 2, 3, 4 years, like, multiple schools will have a spot for you to go play. I can guarantee you that. Like, no one is who's going to offer you it when you're a 26 and you're that much better when you're a junior. No one's going to be like, sorry man, we have no more spots in that class. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, I can guarantee you, I will guarantee you that no one's going to be like, hey man, we offered you 3 years ago and you're still better than everybody, but we don't have any spots for you. I'm sorry, you're going to have to go somewhere else. It's not going to happen. I can promise you, I will bet my life on it. It's not going to happen. I think that people don't necessarily want to take into account like how much time is actually going to pass before you A, set foot on campus for your first fall, and B, play a game, like a meaningful game in college, which isn't going to be the spring of your freshman year. So there's a lot of time, that's going to change between them, and I think yesterday I saw 27 committed, and there's multiple 27s out there committed. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? We're committing 27s.
Couldn't agree
You're
more.
in eighth grade, and we're committing to colleges in eighth grade. Again, this is where, and this
Live
is,
stream.
I digress, and I'm on a rant for a second, but this is why college baseball is in, a little bit of a pickle, because there's no reason multiple eighth graders should be committing to colleges. None. Because especially at some of these schools where, again, for better or for worse, those coaches might not be there. And in some likelihoods, they're not going to be in another 2 years. So like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
I agree with you, man. And hey, if you're 27 and you get offered by name whatever top 5 school, good on you. But I would ask the parents, like, is your 13-year-old really ready to make a decision about where they're going to go to college? Like, I challenge the parents to take a step back, because if your kid's that good, trust me, that coach, you'll have plenty of options. To your point, right? Like, if you're 2023 and you're uncommitted right now, and you come out this spring and you're 90 to 93, trust me, they'll find spots for you, right? Like, it's
Yes,
not
like that. That's my
it's
point. Like,
not that complicated. And
no,
uh
and that's like that. Like the hard part for me and for you, because you and I have had this conversation for a long time, and even people that we know that are in the business, that are still in the business, like a lot of people have mixed feelings about this, but the reality is, like, what's the point? Like, you're telling me that if that kid, like, you're a bro at 27, like, if all of a sudden in 2 or 3 years you're still 91 and 94, like, multiple schools at the highest of levels are going to have a spot for you. Like, there's no
you
rush.
might have more options.
Oh yeah,
You might have more options, right? And if you have more options, and if you're that good, why not wait to get 8 or 9 options? Why not go to those camps and meet the coaching staff? Right? Figure out if you actually want to play for those dudes. You know,
well, there's that, and then there's, think about, with the way college baseball is going, and college sports in general, and you can agree or disagree with it, but why not try to shop some NIL deals over the course of the next 3, 4, 5? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
why
no,
do
that's
this
a
now?
that's a real
Hey,
piece of the puzzle.
like, hey,
It's
if
a
I'm if
real
I'm
piece of the puzzle.
if all these people are after me like this, like, I might be able to monetize this for myself when I get to school. So, like, what do we have in place now, versus what's going to be there in, what are you guys doing now? Oh, we're doing nothing. Like, do you want to go there? Like, we're just, we're not sure. Like, okay, like, well, I keep your options open. Like, there's going to be a spot for you somewhere. And let's be honest,
Yeah.
if you're the reality, I shouldn't say the reality, but if you're a guy who's committing right now, who's 20, 27, you're in eighth grade, if you're a parent of an eighth grader, like, the likelihood of, he's probably going to be super high on draft boards if he continues to develop. Like, he might not go to the draft because, we've talked about this. The draft shortened, and he might go to a super high level school but not get drafted. But, like, likelihood is people are going to play him up. He's going to want to, like, he might not even end up at the school. So why not see how this plays out over the course of the next 3 years? See what happens. Like, that would be the most refreshing thing to me if someone was like, we had like 5 offers at eighth grade, but we let it play out, and now we have 30. Like, shocker.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, and then you go into the conversation around coaches and the 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 likelihood at that level. Like, are they going to be there 6 years from now? Right? Maybe, but go look at those conferences and see how many of those coaches have been around for a decade. When you play at that level, money's a factor, fans are a factor, winning is a factor. Like, you don't have the job stability. Like, not everybody's is Coach O'Connor and Coach Corbin, who have been at those programs for, I think Coach O'Connor's over 20 years, and I think he went over 20 years. Like, not a lot of coaches have that kind of stability at programs. Now, they have that stability for a reason, but that's not the case everywhere, and you don't know if those coaches are going to be there. The other thing too, if you're 27 and a coach offers you and he tells you you need to make a decision, why would you want to play for a guy who's pressuring a 13-year-old? Here's some food for thought.
I
If you
wouldn't.
want if you want to get down to the meat of it, why would you want to play for somebody who wouldn't let a 13-year-old make a decision? Because you
It's
can always wait.
Yeah. Again, it's, like I said, I used my word. Like, you're bullying people into making decisions for what? I don't. And it's the age old argument of, like, well, everyone's doing it. Like, okay, eh, what does that mean? It should, like, to me, like, that's just a lazy argument. Like, oh,
Yeah.
well, everyone's doing it. Like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. So we're just, like, what are we doing? Are we showing up at 9 U games now? Like, Let's go to some 9U games and start recruiting and offering those kids too. Like, what are
But
we doing?
you're not
Come on.
that you're not that far off. If you were 27 and you're a college coach and you've seen that kid play, right? If you've actually gone and watched that kid, and that's the other thing I question is like, how much have you actually seen this kid play? You went and you took the time to go watch a 13U baseball game. That's crazy.
14U. I mean, I started giving lessons. I'm giving lessons to eighth graders. Like, they're not mature enough to make this decision. I mean, it's it's kind of like pulling teeth. Three-quarters of them walk in. I ask them if they learn anything in school. They're like, I literally learned nothing today. Every time they show up, they learn nothing in school. It's unbelievable to me. But yet they can make a decision on where they're going to go to college in 10 years.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Yeah, it's a tough one. But as you said, like it's one thing to not agree with it. It's another thing to acknowledge that it is a thing.
Oh,
Right.
it's 100% a thing.
And it'll continue to be a thing until until the NCAA does something about it, or
Yeah.
because if you're one of those schools that is out looking at 27s, you're doing it because you think it gives you a leg up on your competition, right? And maybe it does. Like maybe that kid is the dude 6 years from now who's going to help you get to a national championship. Like great. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's healthy for anybody. I think it's weird that that's the state that it's gotten to, but it doesn't mean that you can't just dismiss it. And unfortunately, we'll kind of circle back before we close the loop on this. Unfortunately, some of these early commitments, I think, are driving kids to get really panicky about the recruiting process, right? And they get worried, like, well, I'm a 25 and I haven't committed yet. This kid that I play with, who I think I'm as good as he is, he just committed somewhere else. It's not zero sum. Like you need to be good enough first. You need to have a plan of attack. You need to make sure that you're doing what you can control first, and worry about getting it right. And don't worry about when you commit. Right. At the end of the day, when you get to campus, the coaches don't care when you committed. They care about what you do when you get there. And if you're good enough, you'll get recruited. Regardless of level, you'll get recruited. But yeah, I don't envy the kids right now. I can't imagine. I can't imagine being a really good 15-year-old right now and worrying about am I getting recruited or not, and not just enjoying being a 15-year-old and going and playing and but that's the recruiting.
No, but that's where
in.
we're at now. And I think I think it's hard to kind of reconcile sometimes from the outside looking in, and even when you're on the inside. When it was a lot easier for me being at an academic Division III because the reality is you're recruiting senior year to senior year. I have to know at RPI that you have physics, you have pre-calc, that you want something that we offer from a major standpoint. So it was far different, from a recruiting end there. But that I needed to wait until you at least got through your junior year to see where your grades were at and what it was. Do we follow up and watch you play beforehand? Absolutely, we do. But we also have we have to factor in that academic piece as well. And where you're going to be out there. So, it was a little bit easier from that standpoint. Like it's not the rat race of trying to follow around 8,000 kids. But I can't tell you, people would come in and be like, so how many commits do you have? And it's like July. I'm like, 0. Like, what do you mean 0? Like I'm just getting transcripts on guys that we're very, very interested in, because I have to know that, like I said, like they want computer science. They need to take physics. They want to be a mechanical engineer. They need physics, and they need to have a good grade in physics on their transcript in order to continue to be recruited by us when I was there. So it was, it's things like that make it a little bit easier. But, everybody would come into my office and ask, like, one of the first questions would be like, how many kids are committed here? And, it's a very new phenomenon over the last 3, 4, 5 years. And I think a lot of it comes from the Twitter and the Instagram and the come watch me on Instagram Live when I commit this, as a 2027, and things like that. Like, I just don't, I don't necessarily, again, like you said, I disagree with it. I don't see that there's a lot of benefit in it, but it would be, um, it would not be good to not just pretend like it doesn't happen. And just in the last, I think in the last 5 years, it's really ticked up. And, definitely since, I committed in September of my senior year, and that was like, mind blowing to some people. And now, like, think about how late that is, right? Just in 20 years, think about how late September of your senior year to go play Division I baseball is. And 20 years ago, that was considered super early. Like, that's how fast it's accelerated. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but like it's a short period of time in all of college baseball for all of a sudden, like, you went from it was super late to commit in September, or super early to commit in September of your senior year, to now, like, we're committing 2027. We're committing eighth graders in a 20-year span. And don't think like this hasn't been going on for a decade, right? Like, when I was at Siena, we started recruiting a lot further out because everyone was doing it. So it's been going on forever. It's just, I think now, to your point, the social media, and I don't envy them. I don't think Twitter came out until you and I were out of college to date us. But
I don't know. I don't think so.
I mean, Facebook came out
way.
when we were in college. So,
Yeah.
I think I was a freshman or sophomore.
We're
in college
officially
when
dating
Facebook came
ourselves.
out. So everything else came after that. So I don't, we didn't have to deal with any of this. And I think that that's an extra layer of things that I think, as coaches and people who work with young kids, we don't necessarily, we have the empathy for, but I don't think we really understand what it's like for them, because we never had to actually do that. You can find the empathy in the playing time, in the struggling in the classroom, and things like that. But I think there are a decent amount of pressures from a social media standpoint that we never had to live with, that it's a little bit hard for us to kind of understand nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I committed in March of my senior year to Marist.
Yeah, you were later than me.
Yeah, I went and watched practice. They were so good that they were like a 41 win team that year or something like that. They were loaded. I sat down with Coach Schaff and I was like, I want to play for this guy. But yeah, I mean, can you like? I probably would have gotten teased by all my friends if you're now. You committed that late, like I don't know. It's tough.
No, it's a weird thing to think about. Like, I can't imagine having changed my recruiting process to what it is now. Like, it's hard for me to kind of wrap my mind around, like, if all things were the same, it's hard for me to kind of think that, that's why it's hard to kind of articulate it, really. Like, I don't really know what that would look like and what it is, so it's bizarre.
I mean, think about, from a development perspective, like, think about 13 to 17, like,
right,
how much better you got or how much bigger you got. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, we're probably beating a dead horse here. Sorry if anybody loves horses, I do, but yeah, it's tough. I think the big takeaway is, if you're a kid, a parent, don't get caught up in that stuff, right? Take good information in so that you're educated on where you fit and make a good decision based off of that. And if you start there and you're realistic about where you fit, right, then I think it'll give you some relief with regards to the timing of your process. And it's going to be different for everybody. It's just that simple. It's just, everybody's going to be different, and that's okay, because it's not a race to see who can commit the quickest.
No, and you're going to have, I think the one of the bigger things is trying to seek out as much information as possible. Like, there's never really going to be there's nothing not having enough information isn't a bad thing. I think trying to seek out as much information as you possibly can on programs and coaches and recruiting and all these types of things can really start to kind of make your process seem a little less stressful and a little less a little easier from the standpoint of trying to gather as much information as you possibly can. I think just kind of blindly relying on people that, you can take it for what it's worth, but, do your own due diligence on that end as well. Don't just blindly trust everybody when it comes to what it is that, your future, and where you're going for college. Do the research and do your own due diligence on your end to make sure that you're making the right decision for where you want to go and what you want to do for your future.
Yeah, and I think that probably a good place to end it for episode 3. Hope you guys come back for episode 4. Looking to have a few guests on here shortly, and you guys can hear from some new voices and hopefully learn some good information. So thank you again, Coach Glasser.
As always,
our next episode.
Can't wait to see you next week.
All right, brother.